Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spotlight Vancouver, Washington. I'm your host, Doug Varenas, a licensed realtor in Washington and Oregon. And today on the show, I'm super excited. I have my first guest, Andi Costello, commercial real estate broker and owner and operator of Venture Commercial Real Estate. Super happy to have you on the show, Andi. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Doug. I'm honored to be your first guest. I didn't know that. I have that honor of being on your show as the first one. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to chat. I want to congratulate you because recently you were voted through a democratic process, the top commercial real estate agent in Clark County. And I believe it was 2 years in a row.
It is 2 years in a row. Yeah, the Vancouver Business Journal's annual, I guess, business recognition program. So yeah, I'm always surprised, to be honest, because I don't hardly even know that the process is going on and the votes are coming in. And then I get emails the last 2 years that I think look like spam, like, hey, it doesn't seem real. And then I like go back and do a double take and I'm like, oh, it is real. And then they send me a decal in the mail. And yeah, so it's quite an honor. It feels good to finally have the hard work paying off.
Yeah, well, that is quite the accomplishment. I'm curious, like, what the process is for being nominated, and how does that work? Like, what do you
To
have
be
to
honest,
do
I
to
have
become?
no clue. To be honest, I don't have a clue. I think the Vancouver Business Journal puts it out. I think people can write in names, and then there's a voting process. But to be honest, I don't know because I've never voted for myself, so I don't even know what that looks like. Like I said, I
So,
just normally get
yeah,
the notification that I won, but I don't even know that it's happening.
so somebody had to nominate you, and then people are secretly voting for you. Like, you're not campaigning for this
No,
award or anything.
I don't even know what's happening, to be honest. Yes.
You literally get an email in your inbox that
Well,
says you won
yes.
commercial real estate agent of the.
Yes.
That's
And
incredible.
the first time I won, I actually think I deleted the email because it was junk. And a friend Facebook messaged me and it's like, "Hey, congratulations!" And I was like, "On what? What happened?" And then she screenshotted the announcement and my name was spelled wrong. And so then I emailed them and I said, "Hey, my name's spelled wrong." But yeah, so I found out from somebody else last year. And then this year when I got the email, I was like, "This is I think what I got last year that I deleted because it just seems." I don't know, so surreal.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's
Thank you.
that's amazing.
Thank
Um,
you.
you've had a gangbuster year, it sounds like, at Venture Commercial Real Estate. So congratulations on that too. That's quite the accomplishment. How can you take us on a journey of what led you to commercial real estate and founding your own brokerage? What was that like?
Yeah. So I spent 15 years in local government, and in 2017, I was fired by my city council and was trying to find a job in the career. And I thought to myself I was going to be moving a lot. The average tenure of a city manager is only 2 to 3 years, and I always wanted to move to the Pacific Northwest, and the career just hadn't brought me here. And unfortunately, at the time, I was going through a divorce, and my ex-husband said to me, "Well, if you want to move to the Pacific North so badly, why don't you just do it?" And I thought, well, I have no job, and house is sold, and we're getting a divorce. So what's really stopping me? And picked up and moved to Vancouver, and didn't know anybody here. I didn't really know exactly what I was going to be doing. I thought about going back to law school, but I didn't want 6 figures of debt to get out of school and not really make a whole lot of money and basically start over in another career. And I thought, well, really, what's the only thing I know anything about? And it was real estate. And I tried to get into commercial real estate. I cold called a bunch of commercial firms and nobody called me back and didn't really know what I didn't know. And at the time, I was like, well, I need to start earning some money and I need to eat. And I knew it was a very long sales cycle in real estate, even though TV makes residential seem so easy that you'll just show
Right.
up and,
Selling
put
Sunset.
a sign in the yard and, voila, you made 15 grand and didn't really do anything. And I knew that really wasn't the case, but I was like, well, I better start doing something. So I started on the residential side of the business and I just grew my business through networking and connecting with people like yourself. And And eventually I was connected to my now business partner, worked in commercial real estate, and we started working together. And not long after we started working together, we became 50-50 business partners. And in, let's see, I don't know, fall of 22, I found an office building and I kind of jokingly, I printed it out and I put it on his desk with a sticky note. And I was like, we should buy this building with a little smiley face. And it was kind of like tongue in cheek, but he came back to the office and he's like, well, I'll go over there and drive by. And then he calls me, he's like, write up an offer. We should buy that building. So we didn't really have these grand visions of, it was really not a planned thing. And so then when we decided to buy the building, it was like, well, maybe we should open our own office. Like, should we put somebody else's name on the sign? And that's kind of one thing became another. And fortunately, he had owned a brokerage in Bend before, so he kind of knew what he was doing. And it's been a lot of learning along the way. But, I've always kind of had my own way of wanting to run more of a relationship-based business. And in an industry where the stats say that less than 30% of people in the industry are women, or maybe it's 30 to 35%. I don't feel like that's an accurate number. Maybe in other markets, certainly not in the Portland metro area. So, as a woman in an industry pretty male dominated, which is similar to my last industry too, less than 13% of women were city managers. It's not unique to me, but I wanted to build a different type of environment that would help people feel welcome. It was kind of a tough journey to break into commercial, and I want to demystify it a little bit for people that are interested in, starting on the commercial side or, getting out of the residential side of the business. Residentials can be a great business, but it's not for everybody. And so I just wanted to find a different way of doing things. And so I think that's kind of what we're building here, and more of a culture of collaboration and helping each other, figure out how to succeed.
Where were you coming from before? Where were you living previously? And you said you were in politics? Was that
Yeah, well, I was in
or
local
city
government. So
government?
I worked for elected officials that then appointed a city manager. So kind of like, somebody, a CEO, to then run local organizations. So I moved up here from Central California, but before that, I lived in Arizona for 12 years. I was in Sedona and Gilbert, and before that, I was back east, outside of Philadelphia. And yeah, it was a great career until it wasn't. And you know, national politics is pretty vitriolic, but at the end of the day, all politics is really local. More people care about what's happening in their backyard than what's happening in the national landscape. And it's something that I don't necessarily see that getting resolved in our lifetimes. To be honest, I think we've been down this path for a while now, regardless of what side of the national aisle you're on. Just finding some peace and, with your neighbor it's tough. So yeah, so it was good. And that's how when people ask me, how did I know I wanted to come to the Northwest? It's like, well, I've lived a lot of places. I've been fortunate enough that I've been to all 50 states. So, when you travel enough, you know where you want to be. And so it was, I'm hopefully in a place where, barring something totally unforeseen, I don't ever see myself leaving Vancouver. I love living here, and I love what the community has to offer. I love how giving the community is, and I feel like it's a small town, right? I mean, we're like 1 degree of separation, and I feel like as I'm building my network in Portland too. I mean, even though Portland's maybe a second tier metro city or a second tier size city, it's kind of the same thing over there. It's not too hard to find who you need to know.
Yeah. Had you always, I mean, going from politics to entrepreneurship, it sounds like it's a big leap or a different leap. Had you had some entrepreneurial background, or did you just kind of jump in? It's a great story because it really
Yeah.
sounds like things just kind of happened and fell in place. And I find that when you have the right mindset and you put yourself in the right situations and you're open to things and they happen. But had you owned a business before?
No, I've owned some residential rentals, so I knew like about the market and knew about investing like from that perspective. Unfortunately, I think our school system really teaches us how to become employees. And I didn't really understand that, and my parents were employees, so that's how I was raised. I was not raised around entrepreneurship. And, I think when I talk to people that went to college for business and, things like that, I'm like, well, did you learn about entrepreneurship? And most of the time they tell me no, they were taught like big business, also to still go to college to have a business degree to go become an employee of corporate America. And so I think our school system really does do a disservice. And, unless you're fortunate enough to grow up with self-employed parents or family members that you're close to see what that journey is like, I really wasn't exposed to it. But I think, if you're a hard worker, I know being self-employed, people think, well, you can dictate your own schedule and you can make a lot of money and you don't have to work really hard. But I think that it's really more about like you just have more time, flexibility, and control over what you're doing instead of going to an office from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Maybe if you're a night owl, you can, maybe I'll clock in at 10 and, work into the evenings kind of thing. Or, I'm going to work on the weekend so that I can take Wednesday off to, take my kids to the doctor or something like that. So it's not working less. It's just, having time flexibility. And, I was always a hard worker in government. I mean, working 60-hour weeks, you don't get bonuses. You hardly even get a thank you for what you're doing. And basically it's nonprofit work. You have good health insurance and good benefits for the exchange of not being compensated what you would be in the private sector, but, it comes with a lot of stress. So I think if you know that you're a good employee and you're always giving more to your employer than you're really giving back, I kind of was like, well, geez, if I was hard worker over there working for somebody else and working for the man, I don't have any problem doing that for myself. And so I feel like, if you know that you can do that. Now there's some employees that are like, hey, I'm just happy to go and clock in and do my 40 and go home. But there's nothing wrong with that. But, if you're motivated to, that type A personality that can do more and wants to do better and improve things, which has always been my personality, it's not been a too big of a jump. I mean, my biggest regret is that I didn't become self-employed sooner, I'll be honest. But, if you don't
Yeah.
have any exposure to it, I don't know that you know that, right? I mean, again, our school system, your parents, your environment, like that's just, we don't really know any other way. It's like, go to school, get a job, go to school, get a job. It's not go to school, learn a skill, learn a trade, learn how to think critically or anything like that, to then solve a problem to create a business. And so I think, if you look at it from the root of that, it's like, well, how do you know any different unless you're put in that situation or, take the leap of faith and believe in yourself to go do it. So, I think just my
Yeah.
biggest regret is that I didn't do it sooner. I mean, I didn't start and be self-employed till I was, 36, 37. But then you look at people like, Colonel Sanders, who started like Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think he was in his 60s,
Yeah,
So,
he's
and
like
I think
60
like
something.
60 something. And I think even Henry Ford was probably in his 40s when he started Ford Motor Company. So, I mean, it's like, okay,
J.K. Rowling,
really? Okay.
she was like 40 something, when
Okay.
she wrote the Harry Potter
Lot of
series.
series.
So,
Yeah.
it's never too late. I
It's
couldn't
never
agree
too
more
late.
about the public
Yeah.
school system and how it's a mindset like that they teach to be a good employee rather than like solve a problem. Like the goal is always a job, and the job's kind of this ambiguous thing where it's not framed in like you're solving a problem from somebody or you're providing value. And, so I do think that framework isn't given to most people. And I think that's fascinating that you bring that up because I really do. And I'm a product of the public school system and just, owning your own business and having that mentality. It's been a big shift for myself as well, being self-employed and learning what that means. And it's a big mindset shift.
Yeah. And I think, even when you think about some of the simple math problems you might have learned to do math, we're always like these esoteric things that you're like, well, how fast am I going to get somewhere? You're traveling A to B, driving this speed or something like that. And it's like, well, why aren't we giving students math problems to like figure out other skills or other interests, right? I think it's a bigger problem we're not going to solve today, but I think that's where parents can step in and expose their kids to other things other than going to school and getting a job. Because even now, jobs aren't safe, right? You don't get your, retirement plan at the end with your gold watch, right? There is no guarantee that you're going to work somewhere for 40 years and retire with a nice retirement and retiree health insurance. There's no loyalty from the employer side either. So it's an interesting thing. And that's why I love talking to other business owners because I also want to know, just like you're doing. It's like, well, what's your story? How did you get into this?
Right. Yeah. And everyone has a unique story. I know that you're involved in the entrepreneurial community for women and supporting women entrepreneurs in the Vancouver area. Can you tell the audience more about that and sort of what you do in that realm? Because you do a lot for the community. I really want to bring that up because you work with the Rotary, you're involved with Habitat for Humanity. You're really out there giving back to the community. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing and what you're kind of seeing out there, especially for women entrepreneurs in Vancouver.
Yeah, and then my new project is I'm on the inaugural board of launching the Women Council of Realtors Vancouver Network. and helping, women connect in the real estate side of the business. I think women are the fastest growing segment of business owners in the country. Fortunately, there's more opportunity. And I think, unfortunately, because they're forced to work outside of the home because we can't really live on one income in this country anymore. And that's not a political thing. That's just reality. It's really expensive.
Right.
And so, women are trying to find their way into not only the workforce, but into entrepreneurship. And I think, again, it's like we don't know what we don't know. So is there a way we can learn from each other? And, I don't necessarily have time during the day to figure out what's the best payroll system. So if I can talk to another business owner that's like, hey, I'm really happy with what I'm using. Well, hey, then let me run a trial and see if that's something that's worth looking into. And so I think that we have an opportunity to learn a lot from each other. Unfortunately, women want to do business with other women. We want to learn from each other, and women are generally better connectors than men. I think the fact is like women
Hey,
like to
hey
hang
there.
out and all that. It's just I think humanity and how we interact. And so I think they're open to sharing and helping each other. And so I kind of lean into that and lean into the clients. I found it easier to do business with other women because they want to do business with me. So I don't feel like I have to push the boulder up the hill as much. And so it's fun to watch them and see. I'm in awe of women business owners that have kids. I mean, I don't have children and I don't know how, women run households and do all the things that a mom really does, because I think especially when kids are younger, they're relying probably more on mom than on dad. But and it just is like, well, I don't know how you have time in the day to run a business. Sometimes like all I can do is just wake up and put my pants on one foot at a time, right?
Yeah, I mean, my wife owns and runs a business, so I can definitely relate to how many hats she wears and what she has to do with, having two daughters and running the business. And I mean, it's amazing to me as well. It's incredible what people are capable of. I mean, men and women, but the roles that women have to play, especially with family, but it's astounding. So I definitely agree, and I think that's wonderful that you're supporting women entrepreneurs in the community. We need more of that. We need more entrepreneurship all around, I think, but especially for populations that might be underserved or could use some community and some support. Just switching gears, I wanted to kind of talk about like commercial real estate. And for one, what is commercial real estate for those out there who may be unfamiliar? I think people think of like skyscrapers and stuff, but there's quite a number of other aspects to it. What is commercial real estate?
Well, if you look at commercial real estate from maybe a lender's perspective, it would be anything that's considered 5 units or more on a multifamily property, or anything that's not a single family home or like something that could be used as a primary residence. So, a condo, townhome, single family detached house, that's residential real estate. And commercial real estate would really be anything considered not that. So even if it's residential development land, commercial development land, industrial buildings, office buildings, retail, strip malls, anything basically that's not a piece of property that you would live in as a primary residence or residential investment property, basically somewhere where somebody's not living is how I would kind of broadly define it. So it covers a lot of things. And then it also covers leasing. So tenant and landlord leasing for folks that are purchasing property.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the leasing because I've been doing some research on leasing and learning more about that process. And we were just talking about entrepreneurs and getting started and running businesses. I was amazed, and I just didn't know this, how important the lease is to a business's success. And if you have a bad lease, how that can completely torpedo a business. Can you provide a little more detail on that? Because I was astounded at just going through how complicated some of these, how a commercial lease can be. And, it's really an art to negotiating and coming up with these leases and making sure that everything is spelled out very specifically, especially for a small business. Can you speak a little more onto that?
Yeah, I was actually just looking now because I have a client right now looking to purchase a piece of property that has a Starbucks lease, and the lease is like this thick. It's 130 plus pages. And, in that case, it's a very tenant friendly lease because it's Starbucks, right? They can write their own terms. But for a small business owner that doesn't have the leverage of a Starbucks or a national corporation, it is really important that tenants understand what's in the lease. Most leases are very land projections, what is their business plan, and obviously having confidence in yourself that you can succeed and make enough money to pay your rent. I think,
Right.
we do see businesses go out of business, and, that doesn't always align with when your lease is going to expire, but it can be really a big cost, just like, the cost of owning a home is oftentimes a big part of a personal budget. Rent is a big part of a business's budget.
Well, and it's also like when the hours you're able to operate and who's paying for the signage. And I mean, there's a lot of details around things that you kind of take for granted or wouldn't think that can really cost a small business owner quite a bit of money. And you really need somebody who's looking out for your interests when you're drawing up the lease and signing the lease and going over it. I was pretty amazed at the level of detail and what's not sort of assumed. Like, I can't operate on these days, or the tenant wants me to work on Sunday. I mean, there's a lot of details. And so I imagine for a business owner, you're just like, yeah, sign a lease. The rent's this much. I can do whatever I want. And it's really not the case. You really have to pay attention to the lease terms.
That's correct. Yeah, you really need to make sure. I mean, I do reviews for my clients and make comments and notes on it, but at the end of the day, you still need to understand what you are signing before you read it, because there can be a lot of restrictions. And just like we were talking earlier, school doesn't prepare you for that. A lot of us go shopping or go to office buildings or our dentist, and, we don't have any clue what went on behind the scenes for that business to operate at that location, and what it's costing them to be there. And so when you go somewhere and you're like, wow, this is really expensive. It's like, well, they have payroll, they have their lease, they have, all these expenses with operating their business. And unlike big business who, corporate America can offshore their proceeds and, dodge taxes and do all those things, it's a little harder for small business, not to say that they can't do deductions and of course things like that. But, there's just not as many tax abatements and incentives for small business as is for big business.
Right? You need somebody looking out for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the commercial landscape is in Vancouver, because I guess when I think of Vancouver, it's kind of, there's a little bit more sprawl. It's kind of more of a one-story city for the most part. What are you seeing in the commercial landscape in Vancouver specifically, and how do you see it moving forward? What's it going to look like?
Yeah. So I think, the one thing about commercial that can be a little tough is it really depends on what asset class you're talking about. So it's sometimes hard to speak in generics. Fortunately, Vancouver is a growing community, so I think, all asset areas, whether that's industrial, retail, office, are multifamily. We see apartment complexes going up all over the place. It is growing in all areas of commercial real estate. Some of that has been the benefit of what's happening in downtown Portland. There's been a huge exodus of, from company. It's safer, and, he has more ability to control, what could happen to his equipment and his gear in Vancouver than he would in Portland. So I think, we have a lot of advantages here. Housing is still a little bit less expensive than maybe the Portland metro area. So there's also some opportunity for, our employees to relocate here at less of an expense. I mean, I'm very, very, bullish on the Vancouver
Yeah.
commercial real estate market. I always have to think, I'm like, is it bull or is it bear? Bullish on the market here.
Which animal is it?
Which animal is it? And I'm always like, oh, okay, yes. And so I do think that there's still a lot of opportunity. I mean, we're seeing infill projects go into small properties just so that they can get built and developed. And so I think that there is a lot of opportunity here. And even with interest rates staying where they are, as we were talking about with leases, if you are an owner user of a leasing and you're looking to buy, you don't really have a whole lot of ability to play the market, because if you've signed a 5-year lease and your lease is coming up, you now either need to commit to another 5 years, or you need to make a decision to buy or to find another place to lease. And both of those come with costs, of course. And so I think, the market is, there's a lot more movement in the market in commercial real estate because you're just less affected by other market forces, because if your business is forcing you to grow, you have to do that almost at any cost of what's happening in the market, because if you're growing, you need to do something, right? You're either going to need to open a second
Right.
location or move into a larger location or purchase something. And so I think that at least for the owner users, you're a little bit more, motivated, because you can't just be like, well, I'm just going to stay put for another year and let's see what's going to happen in the market. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity. Obviously, Richfield, I think, is still the second fastest growing city in Washington State. So, as part of Clark County, there's still a lot happening up there. And, as the Schuylkill waterfront gets built out and that plan starts happening,
Hmm.
I think there's just a lot of activity in the county in general, and of course in Vancouver. I think it's a great time to be in the commercial real estate market and benefiting from, unfortunately, what's happening in Portland, which has been great for us.
Yeah, I'm also bullish on Vancouver. Obviously, a lot of potential here. I wonder, do you think that Vancouver is going to be a little more vertical? I
Mm.
look at like Highway 99 and just see a lot of, I almost see Highway 99 as like a mini Williams in Portland, where, a decade ago it was one story and kind of flat, and now it's really built up. Is Vancouver going vertical?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of opportunity on Highway 99. There, it is an opportunity zone, so it is eligible for some tax credits. I think really until the used car lots are bought out and that industry is dismantled, until those basically go away. That's really what I think is stopping like the redevelopment from happening on Highway 99. I think yes, it's as we start running out of land, we are going to have to go vertical, and housing's gonna to keep it somewhat affordable is going to have to shrink, or apartments are going to have to go higher. Townhouses are going to be 3 stories to give the square footage without the sprawl. So yeah, I think from a multifamily housing perspective, for sure, and maybe even from an office perspective, when it comes to industrial, obviously warehouses can't really be 2 stories. And so I think, some of those things are going to still need to, a strip mall isn't necessarily going to be 2 stories unless it's a mall, right? So as a strip mall, you're still going to need that space for retail. And so I think it just really depends on, what kind of asset class we're talking about. So there is still a ton of opportunity in Vancouver for redevelopment projects and for, the small infill spaces that have been left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of opportunity here because we have the land and the ability to build vertically with those legacy owners kind of cashing out, or yeah, the used car crowd kind of selling, or yeah, tons of opportunity, which kind of leads to venture. And you guys have had a big year at venture commercial real estate. How was your year, and where are you going in 2025?
Yeah, so we did end the year strong. We've got 3 brokers on board, and so that's been really helpful to kind of take on helping with some of my client overflow. I think for next year, we have some focus of some more targeted cold calling and kind of focusing on some more listing assets of certain asset classes, and maybe even working outside of the Pacific Northwest market. Just because there's more opportunity. One of the benefits of being in commercial, I'm not really tied to the states that I'm licensed in. A lease is a lease. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity that I have been remiss in going after. So I'm kind of excited about changing my own business plan and making some targeted growth in my business. And then, of course, growing the brokerage side and bringing on some additional folks into the office. And so, yeah, we've got our business. We did some business planning last week, got my marching orders, and we're bringing on a new assistant the first of the year. So looking forward to that. That'll help free up, as I told you, I was running a little late scanning some seller documents for a client, and, kind of freeing up some of the time of the administrivia. So that'll be great. But yeah, so I'm excited. I'm hired a business coach, and so looking forward to, using that to leverage my business for some really good growth next year.
I'm sure it's going to be a big year. I saw that business meeting you had at Skamania Lodge. I was a little jealous because it looked like a lot of fun, and what a great location to have it.
Yeah.
Hey, Andy, I want to just end by thanking you for your service to the community, because you really do a lot to help other entrepreneurs and the community in general. I really do think you're a pillar of the Vancouver, Washington community and the greater Pacific Northwest. And again, congratulations on winning Commercial Agent of the Year twice in a row.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the compliment. I wouldn't be here without the help from others. So if I can give back, I'm always willing to do that, because I think, we're all just trying to make it the best we can in this world. And if there's a way that I can help somebody, or, take an hour of my time, I mean, I know time is money, but I think, good karma, putting good karma out to the universe is really important. So just like, helping you out with your podcast, people used to do that for me when I had a video series. So any way I can give back, always happy to do that. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. For the people out there, where can they find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I've got my own website, andicostello.com. That's ANDICOSTELLO.com, or at venture-cre.com. That you can reach out to me on either of those sites.
All right, Andi, all the best to you in 2025, and thanks again.
Thanks, Doug. Same to you. Take care.
Okay.